Okay, so digging into the world of unsigned bands,
Hmm.
local music history, huh? This is pretty cool. We're diving into this podcast, Off the Charts music podcast, and it sounds right up our alley.
Absolutely.
Like finding hidden musical gems, right?
Yeah, it's fascinating how this podcast unearths all these hidden musical gems, you know?
Yeah.
It really speaks to the power of local music scenes.
It's like musical archaeology.
It is.
So tell me more about Off the Charts itself. What's the vibe?
Well, the hosts, Art and Lisa, they call themselves music archaeologists,
I love that.
which I love, right? And they're clearly passionate about digging up these forgotten tracks and stories from these unsigned bands, mostly from the 70s to the 90s.
Okay, so who have they featured? Give me some highlights.
Well, one episode that jumped out at me featured Vic Steffens.
Okay.
He's a producer who's been running Horizon Music Group in Connecticut for almost 40 years.
40 years.
Imagine the stories he could tell.
That's incredible. He must be like a walking encyclopedia of local music history.
Right. He's practically a local legend, helped countless musicians, according to Off the Charts. And then there's the story of Lori Wesley. She started playing piano at 9 years old, right after her second open heart surgery.
Wow. Talk about finding solace and strength in music. Her story reminds me, we were talking about the power of music to help us overcome challenges. It's a universal language that speaks to us on such a deep level.
Absolutely. And Off the Charts really seems to capture that.
Yeah.
They also featured a band called The Living. This one's got a cool little twist. A young filmmaker named Ashley Gherkins used one of their songs in her short film 143.
No way. So there's even a film connection. This podcast just keeps getting more interesting. It makes you wonder how many other hidden musical gems are out there just waiting to be featured in a film or TV show.
Right. It speaks to the enduring power of music to transcend different mediums.
Totally.
And speaking of hidden gems, they also featured Anthony Gadalea, a musician who got his start learning Stairway to Heaven from his Uncle Tony.
Of course.
Apparently, he's become quite the genre-bending artist.
Uh-huh. Everyone starts somewhere, right? Stairway to Heaven to genre bending. That's quite a musical journey. But from what you've said, it seems like Off the Charts is more than just a music history lesson. There's a real sense of community and connection that comes through, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. And speaking of community, they did this fascinating episode about a magazine, radio show, and a cable TV show called Vox Pop. It ran back in 1982, created by these two college friends, Peter Voris and Bill Arsuprit, who were determined to, disrupt the music industry and give local artists a platform.
Wait, hold on. Infiltrating record companies.
Yeah.
They actually did that. Tell me more.
That's what it sounds like. They were really trying to shake things up, organizing events, interviewing musicians, and basically promoting the local scene like crazy.
That's wild.
Yeah.
They sound like true pioneers of the local music scene. It makes you realize, like, behind every great band, there's often a whole network of passionate people working tirelessly to get their music heard.
Exactly. And Vox Pop is a perfect example of that, right?
Yeah.
They were ahead of their time, really, recognizing the power of local music and the need to challenge the established industry. They were creating their own platforms, their own opportunities, long before social media and music streaming existed.
Right, right. It really makes you think about the DIY spirit that drives so much of the music industry,
Yeah.
especially at the local level, right? These were people who saw a gap and decided to do something about it.
And that's something Off the Charts really seems to capture
Yeah.
that raw passion and dedication.
It's almost like they're conducting little mini archaeological digs into these different corners of music history. You mentioned earlier how Lori Weasley found solace in music after her surgeries. Then there's The Living. Their music actually made it into a film. It seems like there's a common thread here, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. And that thread, I think, is the power of music to transcend boundaries. Like it transcends physical limitations, like with Lori's story.
Yeah.
It transcends mediums, like with The Living, and their music appearing in film.
And it even transcends time, wouldn't you say? I mean, here we are, decades later, discovering these artists and their music thanks to this podcast. It's like their stories are being given a second life.
Exactly. And I think that's what makes a podcast like Off the Charts so special.
Yeah.
It's not just about nostalgia or digging up old tracks. It's about recognizing the enduring power of music and the stories behind it.
It's like each episode is a little time capsule,
Yeah.
preserving these moments in musical history. And even though these artists might not be household names, their stories resonate in a way that's incredibly relatable. Like we all have our own soundtracks to our lives, right? Those songs and artists that have shaped who we are.
Absolutely. And Off the Charts reminds us that those soundtracks are often deeply personal and connected to specific times and places.
And it's not just about the big stars, the ones who made it to the top of the charts. It's about those hidden gems,
Right.
the artists who poured their hearts and souls into their music,
Yeah.
regardless of fame or fortune. You know, it's funny when you think about charts in the context of music.
Right.
It's all about popularity, about who's at the top.
Right.
But Off the Charts, this podcast
Yeah.
flips that whole idea on its head, right?
It does.
It's not about the numbers. It's about the heart,
Mhm.
the soul,
Yeah.
the stories behind the music.
It's a great point, and it makes you wonder, like,
Right.
what's being created right now
Yeah.
in someone's garage or local pub that might be considered off the charts in a few decades.
Exactly. It's like this podcast is giving us a new lens through which to view music, you know, to appreciate the vastness and diversity of it all beyond just like the mainstream.
Absolutely, and it reminds us that musical discovery isn't just passive.
Yeah.
It's something we can actively participate in.
Yeah.
You know, we can seek out those hidden gems in our own communities,
Totally.
explore different genres, support local artists.
You know, it's like we talked about at the beginning, this idea of musical archaeology.
Yeah.
We've been digging into this podcast Off the Charts, uncovering these fascinating stories and musical gems.
And just like any good archaeologist, we're left with even more questions, more to explore.
Absolutely. It makes you want to like go out and hear these artists for yourself.
Right.
Maybe even discover some new favorites in your own backyard, right? So to wrap things up, would you say listening to Off the Charts is a good place to start for anyone feeling that like adventurous spirit?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun, it's engaging, it's a deep dive into a world that's often overlooked, you know?
Yeah.
The world of unsigned local music.
Yeah, for sure.
And you might just discover your next favorite band or even feel inspired to unearth some hidden musical history in your own backyard.
Now, wouldn't that be something? Well, on that note, I think we've done our part in spreading the word. Time to go do some digging of our own.